was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, manic depression.
They diagnosed me with having ADD.
He told me I had conduct disorder.
ADHD.
Mild depression.
Major depression.
Manic depressive.
Borderline personality disorder. Compulsive disorder.
Anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia.
ADHD.
Sleep disorder. Identity problem disorder.
There's no such thing as mental disorder. A mental disorder is whatever someone says it is, and if the person saying this is a mental disorder has enough power and influence, then people believe, oh, that's a mental disorder.
Όμως δεν μπορείς να έχεις δύναμη ή επιρροή χωρίς αξιοπιστία. Έτσι η ψυχιατρική κατασκευάζει τη δική της.
It's based on a grab bag of checklists for disorders that are published in a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are no statistics in this book, by the way. That just makes it sound more scientific.
They create this cluster of disease, and they get together and they vote. Is this a disease? All in favor say aye.
It's marketed as a scientifically based document. Now, the American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the DSM, do a lot of work to create an aura of scientific precision around the DSM, but it's not scientifically based.
Από την αρχική έκδοση του εγχειριδίου διαγνωστικής και στατιστικών, DSM, ο αριθμός των ψυχικών διαταραχών στο διαγνωστικό εγχειρίδιο αυξήθηκε σε 374. Με κάθε νέα διαταραχή, οι ψυχίατροι δημιουργούν ακόμη έναν τρόπο για να εξαπατήσουν το κοινό.
If you have 27 ways to bill in the DSM, that's 27 ways to bill. If you have 300, that's 300 ways to bill. So you can pretty much find anyone walking on the street that could fit into a DSM somehow.
When you build insurance companies, you can't say the word. You've got to send in a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things. You know, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
For each one, there is a 5-digit code with a decimal point. Now, the implication of that is if I have illness 403.16, that's different in some important and scientifically proven way from someone who has 403.17. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Είναι πραγματικά απίστευτο ότι ενώ παρουσιάζουν στον κόσμο το εγχειρίδιο DSM ως ένα επιστημονικό γεγονός, οι ψυχίατροι παραδέχονται ανοιχτά την πλήρη έλλειψη της επιστημονικής του βάσης.
We have no diagnostic reliable markers for almost any illness there is in the DSM.
What we're testing for in psychiatry, it's hard to say because there's nothing specifically.
But as far as a test that's clinically useful, you know, basically we're not there yet.
We don't have any laboratory tests that we can use to determine whether somebody does or doesn't have a mental illness.
There are no good biological tests for detecting mental illness.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do.
There is no chemical test right now.
There are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness.
Αυτές οι διαγνώσεις διαφέρουν όσο και οι ψυχίατροι που προβαίνουν σε αυτές. Σε αυτή την κρυφή βιντεοσκόπηση, το άτομο πήγε σε διάφορους ψυχίατρους και παραπονέθηκε για τα ίδια συμπτώματα.
I'm extremely unorganized, and I didn't used to be. It's caused problems in the family. It's caused problems getting, you know, I'm self-employed.
So you've got ADD, ADHD, you're depressed, and your depression is bipolar depressed.
So you have a brain chemistry disorder, and it's probably genetic.
You have a lot of the symptoms of depression.
So it seems like it is a mixed picture. What that means is like we got some depressive symptoms and some, you know, high symptoms.
If you're bipolar, I'll need to give you a mood stabilizer. We don't know, I kind of doubt it.
It's considered low-grade bipolar.
You are more of the ADD than ADHD.
And as far as medications for depression, because I would recommend that you start a medication, which are Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, selects them.
Usually propylene XR is pretty good.
They'll give you some Lexapro in the morning and some trazodone at night.
Lamictal is a better medication for that. It works on your depression also.
But the treatment for any bipolar cycling is the same. The lithium,
Remeron is another one.
trazodone,
Tegretol,
Lipigood,
Wellbutrin,
Lexapro,
Lamictal,
Equatroid,
Depakote,
lithium.
Ambien.
You may need an antidepressant also with your Lamictal.
We don't know if I give you a medication if it is going to work or not.
To a certain degree, it's trial and error.
You never know if it's the right drug.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
I have cured none of my patients.
We're always challenged by our lack of knowledge.
I mean, in fact, we don't know what the causes of mental illness are.
Most mental illnesses, we do not know the cause.
Of course, it would be nice to know exact reasons of disorders, but maybe in the future.
I'm the Director of Research at the American Psychiatric Association. We don't know the etiology of really any of the mental disorders at the present time.
DSM-5 is coming out. It's grown to 10 times its original size, and it labels everybody. I could find 5 diagnoses that would fit you or anybody else.
Συγκρίνεται το αυτό με την παθολογία. Μια αληθινή επιστήμη που ανακαλύπτει πραγματικές ασθένειες με χρήση πολλών διαγνωστικών τεστ ακριβίας.
We do millions of laboratory tests as well as the structural examination and the microscopic examination. It's a whole series of applied scientific procedures. In the case of psychiatry, there isn't any laboratory tool that can precisely identify a psychiatric disease and allow it to be classified.
It's not as if there's some study of tissue or some study of the body or some study of matter. These are all categories which are made up. They're simply made up. They don't exist in nature. They're decided upon by psychiatrists and voted on.
Οι ψυχίατροι δεν είναι οι μόνοι που κερδίζουν από το DSM. Όπου βρίσκεις μια ψυχιατρική διάγνωση, βρίσκεις και ένα ψυχοφάρμακο.
The pharmaceutical corporations now contribute enormous sums of money for the education of psychiatric residents and for the support of research by their professors, so that psychiatry today has become in America, has become very largely learning which drug to use with which disease or disorder.
We need to make sure that we understand the very close interactions among the American Psychiatric Association with its DSM, the pharmaceutical companies, who love the fact that every time there's a new edition of the DSM, there are dozens more categories in there, and so more conditions for the drug companies to say, oh, we've got a pill for that.
Το 2006, μια μελέτη αποκάλυψε ότι το 56% όλων των ψυχιάτρων που αποφάσιζαν ποιες διαταραχές να βάλουν στο DSM είχαν οικονομικούς δεσμούς με μια φαρμακευτική εταιρεία τουλάχιστον. Σήμερα αντιλαμβανόμαστε τις συνέπειες. Ένας καταιγισμός φαρμάκων που στοχεύουν σε επινοημένες διαταραχές, οι οποίες στηρίζονται σε μια αυθαίρετη διάγνωση και βρίσκονται στο DSM.
The fact that it is couched in the language of science, without necessarily having any of the scientific data or underpinnings to justify it, is as threatening as anything we've seen today.
Σήμερα οι ψυχίατροι επιχειρούν εγκεφαλικές αρρώσεις για να εξαπατήσουν το κοινό, αντιγράφοντας νόμιμα φάρμακα. Είναι το πιο πρόσφατο και ακριβό τους κόλπο.
We can scan all the brains we want to. The fact that we see changes in different people's brains, changes in functioning, doesn't mean that we've discovered anything that has its origin in the brain. It just means that we're seeing changes, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the brain.
Οι ψυχίατροι και οι ψυχολόγοι χρησιμοποιούν το DSM για να χαρακτηρίσουν 450 εκατομμύρια ανθρώπους παγκοσμίως ψυχικά ασθενείς. Αριθμός ισοδύναμος με τον πληθυσμό της Γαλλίας, Ιταλίας, Γερμανίας, Καναδά, Αυστραλίας, Αγγλίας και Ρωσίας μαζί. Ενώ οι πωλήσεις ψυχοφαρμάκων που δίνουν φτάνουν τα 27 δισεκατομμύρια δολάρια ετησίως, η επιδότηση κυβερνήσεων για τους ασθενείς αυτούς φτάνει σε μεικτά έσοδα των ψυχιάτρων στα 440 δισεκατομμύρια δολάρια το χρόνο. αρκετά από αυτά τα χρήματα προέρχονται από τη διάγνωση και την αγωγή των πιο έμπιστων και ευαίσθητων ανθρώπων μας.